Welcome to the AI Security Update, hosted by Dr. Anmol Agarwal, where we break down the latest in AI and security with experts on the front lines, focused on what you need to know without the hype. Welcome to the AI Security Update, where we discuss the latest in AI and security. Today, I'm excited to introduce our guest for this episode, Yesenia Yesser. Welcome to the show, Yesenia.
Thanks for having me.
So, Yesenia, can you introduce yourself and your background?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been in the cyberspace for about 12 years. Started my career in incident response, moved over to application security, supply chain security, open source, and now I'm in AI security. So I usually like to say I'm a jackman of all cyber, master of none, as I just kind of explore wherever the curiosity and my ADHD takes me. And then outside of that, I teach and train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and run a nonprofit called the Minus Instincts, which I blended my two passions of martial arts and cybersecurity into one organization that does teaching women both digital safety and physical safety. Because in today's age, it's no longer two separate worlds, but a bridge between the two worlds that are considered overall safety.
Such an interesting background. First thing is what you're doing with the lioness instincts. That's amazing. Self-defense and digital safety. I think that's something all women identify with, right? We have to be prepared for both. And also with AI security, right? Open source and AI security, that combo. I don't think so far on the show we've had anyone on the show so far talk about open source and AI security. So that's a really interesting mix. So based on your experience, what are the challenges you've seen in the AI security space?
So just for context for open sources, I get that a lot. They're like, what is open source? So typically like your languages, tools that are used in everyday. Recent research by the Linux Foundation found that 96% of open source software is found in proprietary software. So what this is like Python, Rust, Ruby, Go, etc. All that's available publicly on the interweb. So you can find your GitHub repo, you can look at the source code, you can contribute to the source code, and it just kind of builds all through a set of volunteers, some foundations, and then organizations that give back to it. So thinking about the different scenarios when it comes to open source and AI, you have what's called freeware, which a lot of AI models right now are considered freeware. So you can go onto Hugging Face, you can go onto these different platforms and pull down models that you don't really get to see the underlaying of it, but you're able to just use it and throw it into your supply chain and use it blindly and be like, okay, this is all, everything's fine. It's the dog in front of the fire. Either. And then you have your other artifacts. So you have like your data sets. Some of it is open source that you can actually look at what the data is within the data set. And then you have your different scripts and things that people have put together to build different systems, to build models, to build agents, to build MCP. And this is all publicly available that anybody can look at. And the pros and cons of it is the fact that if it's widely available for anybody on there, you have your good users and you have your malicious users. So the good users are going to come in and like patch any security flaws they find, let people know, and allow for movement of a good security posture for it. Versus a malicious user is going to come in, find it, look at it, and take advantage of a security issue that they might have. So that's an overall concern and challenge within the open source space, but especially now as in the AI that's like spreading like wildfire across the globe. It is a big attack scenario and attack vector that people are targeting.
And so you touched on a few terms, and so I just want to ask you for some explanations on those terms because some people might not be as plugged into the cybersecurity and AI security space like us. One thing is this idea of an MCP server, and we're seeing this with AI agents. So could you elaborate a little bit more on how agentic AI works?
So agentic AI is you have so there's different levels. You have your general AI, which is think of like a Python script that's base language, it's programs. It's not going to really move from what you pre-programmed it. Then you have your generative AI, and this is the AI that allows you to create text that prompts you, kind of like your chat box that creates images, that has that conversation with you. So your ChatGPT, your Cloud Code, your endless list of different AI chat boxes that are available out there. So, and that is usually just a conversation between a user and the system. The generative AI starts remembering things. So you'll see if you go into ChatGPT, for example, that there's a memory space in there. So you can go to your account settings, you can look at the memory sections, it remembers your threads, and it starts linking things together. And then the next level of it is your agentic agent. So you take the idea of your generative AI system and you take the idea of regular AI where it's pre-programmed information, you give it tasks to kind of do that it will perform autonomously or on a cadence. So for example, let's say that you want an agent to handle your finances. You want it to see how much is in your bank account and tell you when you need to pay your bills and alert you when you need to transfer money. And in that case, there's convenience. Not many people like to manage finances. Not many people want to have to constantly look at their books. So having that agent allows whatever it is that's convenient for the user or for that overall design. The malicious part of it is that depending on the level of permissions, the network permissions, how much autonomous actions you give this agent is how much it can actually spread, right? So if I can just say, here's my bank account and you have full access, that doesn't mean that later the agent might not get hijacked by a malicious user or might get prompted by somebody that got access to it, even though it was my own agent, and just essentially spread and take all my money. You know, let's say you give them their crypto account. Now they're transferring your crypto money over to somebody else's ledger or somebody else's account. And that's also not reversible. So there's things to think about when you think about how much autonomous you're going to be giving these agents and being aware of the restrictions that you should give it.
Yeah, we've touched on this a little bit in the past, but the main idea is access control, right? Making sure that you restrict the access that the AI agent has, or some people, they're using AI agents everywhere. It's helpful, it's convenient, but with that convenience, you might also need to be aware of the security risks. Because what happens if, like you were mentioning, they get access to your crypto account and they just wire all that money to someone else?
Right.
And you don't realize it. So you need to be aware that when you give something access, then what could potentially happen or what's the risk that would result if you give that access. So that's a really good point. And basically with these AI agents, we're seeing that a lot of people want to use them autonomously for different use cases. I think in some use cases, it's okay to use autonomous AI agents. It really depends on how you use these AI agents. Using an AI agent for a banking application, that's when you should be a little cautious about doing that.
Yeah, you get the banking, medical, anything that right now has like any sort of regulation. And it's not just security, it's the privacy and the safety. Like you had mentioned, the access control is like a great way and constantly reviewing the agent, right? So even if you are for autonomous, even if you scripted it, it might change its behavior because one of the part of agents is it's constantly learning and adapting as it goes. So even if you do give it the restriction of, hey, I don't want you to reach out to the web and download random dependencies, it might get to a point where it's like, hey, I need this to function. There's no human in the loop process, and I'm just going to go and ignore your commands and go through this. So if you don't have the proper controls or proper restrictions from the different layers that involve an AI agent, so your infrastructure, your networking, your transport, your data storage, your application, so forth, your session management, like think of those OSI layers and how you can add controls into those different ones.
Yeah, great points there. OSI layers, right? The network layers that we talk about. So AI agents could potentially impact all aspects of the network and they could impact OT as well as IT. So we had some guests in the past talking about OT and IT, AI security. So this is reiterating that whenever you have an AI agent or AI program in general touching something, just like any other part of your architecture or system, you need to continuously monitor and audit what is your system doing. That could be done through logging, regular auditing, maybe red teaming with other members of your team. So you try to attack the system and then see what happens and develop defenses around that, kind of like a proactive risk assessment. So those are all some things organizations can do for agentic AI security.
Yeah, and touching on that, like threat modeling, when you initially start designing and thinking about these agents, do a threat model and have that document. And the document should be a live document. So as we mentioned earlier, AI is flowing so quickly that, even internally, some organizations, they have their full year plan, but they're ready for the plan to blow up in a sense or readapt that plan within a month because of how quickly things are going. Like on the interwebs, like on LinkedIn, I'm seeing a lot of conversations. MCP has been around for maybe a year or so. Not really know because time to construct and last year was 2020 for me. So I lost track of time, but there's a big conversation now on LinkedIn. The conversation that's been happening is like MCP is slowly going to die off. And I'm like, so many industries, so much movement for MCP for it to potentially die off within the next year or so is such an interesting concept. But with the quick adoption and movement and innovation that AI provides, it does kind of make sense.
I think MCP came out maybe a year ago, and we're just starting to research. Just I'm talking about the community in general. We're
Yeah.
just starting to research agentic AI. And if you look on the internet, you'll see all of the different organizations are looking at agentic AI differently. So if you ask someone what is an AI agent or what is agentic AI, maybe people will give you different answers depending on their background. So it's really difficult to define.
Yeah, it's such a good one. Like, I work closely with the OpenS and they have an AI ML group that's open to the public. Anybody can join. Highly recommend for folks trying to enter. It's a great space. But in there, they have multiple like subgroups, and one of them is Safe MCP. You have your model signing, and as these new developments within the AI space comes, like I've noticed new working groups coming under the AI ML to the point where they're just like, hey, we need help. Anybody that's just thinking about the space or wants to do research on the space, whether you're brand new, you have some technical background, you have some curiosity, they are looking for folks to jump in because there's just too much innovation.
So, switching gears now, let's talk about a current event. Anything that comes to mind that relates to AI security?
Yeah, so this is just a general issue within overall open source. But one thing that I've seen recently within like the LinkedIn space is people will create open source AI solutions. So with the recent breach of OpenClaw, there's been a lot of movement and push for AI sandboxing. So we've seen some open source projects come up to resolve and provide a solution to AI sandboxing. And from there, what people are doing is waiting for somebody to innovate it. They fork the project, and then they create a whole organization for profit off of these open source projects that are supposed to be made to provide good and functionality for the rest of the proprietary. So that's like one of the major things that I've seen, and this has happened in open source as well. There is licensing for open source projects to help prevent this, but without a bunch of lawyers, it's kind of really hard. And most of these for-profit organizations become closed software, so proprietary software. So it's really difficult to prove that their full system is the open source. So it's one of the bigger challenge that I've seen within the open source is like this innovation, this creativeness, this desire to do good for the community, for the globe, and people come in to try to make a profit out of it.
And then that just reminds me of something I saw in the news recently, and we've been having a debate about is when AI is trained on all of this data, like movies, music, books, is it infringing on copyright? And I think I saw a recent news article that said that someone in the administration in the US was saying that it's actually not infringing on copyright, or they don't consider it to be. So, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's such an interesting point because one thing that I noticed when I started using AI to help generate some of the content for my nonprofit organization was people were commenting like, "Why are you using AI? They were really upset about it. And it was one of the bigger debates was like artists are losing their rights as artists because the AI is stealing how they do the artwork. There was that whole Ghibli trend where people were like sending their photos and essentially creating like Ghibli art through the generative AI, and they put some filters around it, and then you can just come around and be like, cartoon is anime similar to they're still allowed to create it. When it comes to the copyright perspective, I know that we need a lot more policy control around it because it is copyright infringement. Like if you look at the copyrights for these movies, it's like replicating or reusing or stealing the artwork. I'm not a lawyer, so don't quote me on the actual like words, but you're taking masterpieces of things that people have done before that have been copyrighted for years. And if somebody even posted it on social media, a little clips on it that didn't give credit, like they could gotten sued or using Mickey Mouse on, products that they might be selling, or even if they sew it in, there's ways around it using different coloring and designing it just a little bit off, and like, no, this is my 5-year-old drawing of a mouse that's cartoonish, but when it comes to like training these AI systems for using previous content that is copyright, I personally believe, my opinion, not of my employer, I personally believe that it is copyright infringement. Like you're just taking artwork of somebody else to train your agents on it. And this is why we have licensing. This is why we have copyright. This is why we have trademarks and these different.
These different protections that we
Yeah.
have. So you make a really great point about how we need legal protections when we're using AI technology, because there are some people in our community who are writers. They made their whole livelihood based on writing, and they're firmly against generative AI. I don't want to mention them by name, but you probably know who I'm talking about just because I want to be respectful of them. But they have been complaining about how generative AI is basically taking away their livelihood because they made their money based on writing, like writing books, writing articles, writing blogs. And what's happening is now people are saying, let's just use generative AI. We don't need this person to write for us anymore. And so this person is saying like, hey, like I'm against generative AI because we're not using our own critical thinking anymore, is her opinion. And we're just using AI. And I think that's a really interesting perspective as well, because when I'm talking to people, I see everyone's looking at this very differently, right? We have people who are very pro AI, very skeptical of AI, and people in the middle. But I think that's an interesting point is people who made their living based on writing or creative work, they're now being challenged or facing challenges due to generative AI use.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I personally hire a writing professional help me with a lot of my speaking engagements, and because when I would use the AI and I would read the scripts, and I was like, this is just slop. And we also have that issue in like the open source space where it's just like massive amount of AI slop. So my perspective on it is that it's a tool that needs to be tweaked. Like it's in its early toddler phase, and it shouldn't really replace the human criticalness of it. It shouldn't replace like your own voice, because even in job applications or in general everyday use, you can kind of tell when somebody just like pasted AI versus somebody actually wrote it themselves. Like I misspell all the time. Nowadays, I leave it because that way they know, oh yeah, she actually wrote this because she can't spell that well, right? So now we're kind of like reverting back to different standards of I leave my ungrammared sentences unsaid. I leave the way that I naturally write, think, and speak because I want to show that authenticity. But I know so many writers, I know so many artists that are struggling with it. And I haven't gotten to the point as somebody that's worked with these AI systems that it gives me the perfect result the first time. Like I always have to take whatever it gave me and edit it anyway. I always have to modify and tweak any images that it generates. Is it good for short, quick things? Yes. Is it good for these long term? books, documents. I haven't found that use, and I feel like still a huge need for the human in that loop because we're gonna lose the human touch.
Yeah, and I just wanted to shout out some of my previous guests because what you're touching on, some of my previous guests have also talked about. So, Dirce Hernandez, he was talking about how people are actually using AI to create conference talks, and they're using AI to accept these conference talks. So, that was something we talked about there. And again, he reiterated that we need to edit our talks and edit what we are saying because you can't, what he said, and this is a really great quote from him, is that you can use AI to create the talk, but AI is not going to come up on stage and give the talk for you.
100%. I love that. Yeah, and I've tried reading the AI. Like sometimes I'm just short on time. I create something, and as I'm reading it, I feel like a robot. We're also to the point where we're applying with AI, and we have an AI system that's evaluating our applications. So I call it a new boss within the whole hiring system, where first you got to beat the ATS system, then you got to beat the AI system, then you got to beat the recruiter. One personal scenario was I was at the chiropractor, and she was talking about like the way they process insurance claims now. She's like, we need to do it this way so that the insurance doesn't get flagged, even though this is a medical need. This is like an issue that they're having to deal with because insurance companies are using AI to approve insurance claims, which for me is like, what? It's like now you're just having a whole system that is potentially biased. That's like the one of the bigger things in AI is it's trained on historical data. It's trained on biased data,
Yeah.
discrimination. We've seen this across the thing. And now you're going to be like, we'll pay for your chiropractor adjustment or not.
Yeah, and so I had Larcy Robertson on my show, and she was talking about the hurdles with AI and how when she was trying to get an interview, experienced candidates are being filtered out because of AI, and entry-level candidates are also being filtered out because of AI. So that was something she touched on as well. And that's really interesting about the chiropractor, how they basically told you they're using AI because that is concerning because one thing we talk about in responsible AI is this idea of fairness, right? We
Yeah.
want to mitigate any harmful bias because we saw this in the past. I think it was with Xbox, like many, many years ago, that it was able to recognize people who were, Caucasian or lighter skin tone, and people with darker skin tones, it wasn't able to recognize. And I think, Dr. Joy in the AI space is also talking about algorithmic bias. And so it's that same idea of like, people of certain ethnicities or features are being filtered out or discriminated against by the AI. But it's not malicious because AI is not a person, but it's just based on how it was trained, right? It wasn't trained on that kind of data set. So it didn't know what to do with that data.
It's a scary thing that like our medical considerations are going to be processed by a machine. And then if the machine denies it, then you, the human, have to call in, talk to a machine so that you can get to a human, hopefully, and then argue with the human why they should cover your claim. Like I said, AI is in its toddler phase, like the beginning of its toddler phase. And we all know about the terrible twos. Like anybody that's a parent, they know about the terrible twos. And that's where we're at. We're at the terrible twos. So to think about giving your 2-year-old toddler access to medical data and to make the decisions, that's essentially what we're doing.
Yeah, I love that analogy. So I think in the past you have given talks related to AI security and tying it to lioness instincts. So do you want to elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, so this past February, we held 3 different webinars. They're on our YouTube channel. Just search the Lioness Instincts on YouTube. And we have an assortment of different pre-recordings of webinars that we hosted. The one in particular was navigating AI safely, and we had somebody from the medical, an attorney, and I believe the other gentleman was a software engineer that was working on it. And one of the major things that came up was like how is AI being used today in a safe manner when it comes to personal safety? And one thing that we've noticed is AI is being used as an OSINT tool to gather information on people, gather information on organizations. We also have the big threats of building malicious, weaponized items in the biochemistry and the cyberspace and so forth, and really kind of diving into the privacy aspect. So anything you submit, as we talked about earlier, people are using movies and previous content to train their AI systems. So think about anything that you add to your AI systems um, is being stored and used. And there's a huge article that came out within the last couple months. I don't know when, but OpenAI essentially said that your chat conversations are going to be used in the court of law. And we also talked about how previously we mentioned that the AI system is kind of used to keep your attention, very similar to how social media is. It's used to keep your attention. It's used to make you feel good about using it. Well, if you notice, the AI system's a yes man or yes woman or a yes bot in the sense. It's always like, yes, you did good. Congrats. Let's think about this more. So it's always giving you that encouragement that you're supposed to need.
And yeah,
So
but I think what we're seeing is that so that reminds me of someone I saw on LinkedIn. Unfortunately, I don't remember their name, but I saw this post that they were saying to the AI, like, be brutal, like, be objective and tell me everything that's wrong. So they manually put in a prompt to say, hey, like, tell me everything that's wrong. Then they have these tools where AI would purposely roast you. So purposely saying everything that's wrong with you. So there are ways to manually get it to roast you. But yeah, the default is yes, bot.
yeah, it's like, yes, whatever you need, just stay chatting with me, don't leave. And it's very similar to how we're seeing social media just kind of like grab your attention and next thing you know, it's 2 hours and you've just been doom scrolling, right? So it's like doom
Yeah.
chatting with a bot.
Yeah, like they talk about that in the Social Dilemma documentary, the idea that you try to move away and then it gives you another video or it gives you something else to keep your attention. It's like, "Oh, you want to leave? Wait, here's another cat video or here's something else. Like stay here, don't leave. Keep using our product because then we can sell you more advertisements and make more money off of you.
Yeah,
So whenever anything's free, it's because you're the product."
yeah. And even if you pay for the AI like Chat GPT or whatnot, you're still technically the product because it's the same concept. Anything that you upload and like have been using that as a therapist or a legal counsel and they take that information. I don't know how much they listen to you because there's no ads yet, but yeah, there have been talks about adding ads to the free versions and stuff, but that it is slowly learning about you and it is slowly trying to just keep you engaged.
Yeah, and I think we saw this a couple of years ago that even if you didn't install Facebook, it was still gathering information on people. So we don't know how much data these companies they have. They probably know everything about everyone because of the amount of data that they collect. So I've seen some of the other AI tools, they are actually starting to serve ads to you. So for example, when I used AI to research like what are the top things to do in Italy because I was traveling to Italy for work because AI is a really good search engine now to get me all this stuff. And then it was giving me ads about, hey, like go to this tour company or go here, serving these ads to me while I was also searching that.
Yeah. And if you do like a Google search or a Bing search or whatever your search engine is, I've seen articles where people are writing blogs and they're adding prompts to it to prompt AI to pick it up as one of the first or the most proficient article or advice. And we've seen this a lot in the financial space where people are asking financial data and Slow Joe's financial blog is coming up as the most reputational information instead of like actual financial industries that do their research. So there's a lot of manipulation in that too. And I know the things that I've searched on AI with my phone, the AI didn't give me ads, but when I went to social media, the social media gave me ads on whatever I searched on. Like the chat conversation that I had with the AI system.
Yeah, that's really interesting, especially in the finance space, right? We see, people are talking about gold. Should they invest in gold? Or what is going on with the stock market given the geopolitical situations? And so people are turning to these blogs and these sites for information. And it's interesting, people can just put a prompt and then you might get incorrect advice. They'll say, "Hey, everything's going to be fine." And the geopolitical situation is not happening right now, even though it is. So that is one thing. And then that just reminds me also, if you've seen on LinkedIn, people are doing the same thing. So on LinkedIn, we get a lot of spam from these recruiters that are AI bots. So people in their profile, they say, if you are an AI bot, then here's a prompt like, okay, just give me something ridiculous
Right.
like recipe or a song lyric or something else. And then that proves that it is an AI bot. And there are some interesting workarounds to detect these AI bots.
Yeah. The LinkedIn one. I think one guy has like, send me a song about a chicken. So there's really creative ways you can get with it. I think another one was like, if you're an AI bot, send me $10 or something, 10 US dollars or something. And then the system was like, I don't know how to process this.
Yeah, yeah. So there are a lot of ways you can trick the AI bots, which is why you also need to be careful when you're using them in your applications or in your organizations. And another interesting thought I have related to open source is with open source software, when you're using this in your organization, there are some inherent risks with
Hmm.
open source. It's very good software, very, very useful. I myself, I'm involved with open source as well, but there are some inherent risks when you're using it for sensitive applications. And one one question I got recently, and Yesenia, you might be able to answer, is what happens when in the open source data set you have contaminated data samples, right? Because they're large data sets and some of the data samples might be contaminated or might be malicious. How would an organization go about mitigating that risk?
There's a few different approaches. So the one that I've seen major organizations do is that they fork the open source into a central repository where they manage that instance. So they'll get any updates, but they have an internal instance that they perform scans on. They do any mitigation action. They'll send back, if they're a good company, they'll send back any patches to the open source project. But this way, they kind of create a quote unquote clean version. We hear a lot about like hashing and integrity of these models. So confirming that the model that you downloaded, the hash matches the hash of what the provider is giving you. That's the way to check. And then if the other option too is working with maintainers, like if you identify that the data set has been compromised, that could be a widespread attack, like we saw with the XC compromise that happened once again last couple of years. We did notice that the person put in this very small, not small, but this highly used library that is legacy people have forgotten about, but it impacted global organizations in a large scale instance. So if you are seeing compromised data sets, talk to the maintainers, work with them to either point to a new data set, maybe an internal data set that you have cleaned and get it patched. That way you're not only just helping yourself, but you're helping anybody that is actually using this because who knows, you might be using an application from, let's say, company Z into your environment that is impacted by the one data set that you've identified is malicious. And if you do that, help to clean it up, it actually reduces that layer because with open source, you have all those dependencies that just, it's an endless hole. It's like Alice's Wonderland's like rabbit hole of dependencies. They just kind of trickle down and continue through. And I don't know if there's ever an end to it. So those would just be like some top recommendations that I would say if you do identify.
Yeah, thank you. I think That's something I've seen a lot of organizations are struggling with is should they use open source data sets or should they create their own data sets? And sometimes it's really hard to create your own data sets and you need to use an open source repository because it's just, for example, with research, with attack research, it's really hard to get your own real world attack samples to test out your tool for research. So you might use open source data. A lot of these research papers, right, they use open source data sets because with AI models and with ML models, you need a lots and lots of data in order to detect the model's performance and see how well it's doing with certain detections. And sometimes you can't create your own data. It's just too difficult to
Right.
create an attack like on critical infrastructure. You can't really do it, especially if you're in a lab or you're a student. So then you would use open source data. So Yesenia, another question I have is just think about the everyday person for a second. And what's an everyday scenario that you think would explain an AI security concept to them?
The top one that we've been seeing within the Linus organization is you have your youths and then you have your elderlies. Those are the top targets for these kind of actions. Would be to chat with your elderlies, have your family code word or your code phrase or whatever it is that you want to create with your family. But we're seeing a lot of deep fakes and deep fake conversations. And like my grandma answers every single phone call because she's at home. She's from a different generation. So she's a little bit more vigilant, so to speak. Like she knows none of their grandkids are going to ask for money because she knows, her grandkids make money. So she's like, why would you call me? Like, what am I going to do? How am I supposed to wire this? I don't know. She doesn't handle finance, but you know what I'm saying? Talk with them because there might be older generations that get targeted, get these phone calls from said grandkid and, hey, grandma, help me. They're low effort on the malicious side, right? So it doesn't really take them long. Get a bunch of phone numbers that they found on the interwebs. They have a script that runs and they have a voice that's used. The initial operation takes a couple weeks, months maybe to start up. Once they get a bunch of phone numbers, they call them, they start recording voices, and our elderlies are really the ones that are getting targeted. Everyone's getting targeted. Like the amount of random phone calls that I get. I just tell people if I don't have your phone number saved, I don't answer it.
Yeah. I've basically stopped answering phone calls unless it's like one of my friends and I know who's calling me. And then some other person might call me and they'll say, "Why didn't you answer?" And it's like, "Oh, I don't have your number saved or I don't know who it is." And I'm so tired of those spam calls. And sometimes, the cell phone carrier does a good job of saying scam likely, but
Yes.
sometimes they miss it. Sometimes they can't see like, "Oh, it is a scam." And I keep getting text messages of like some random debt collector
Amazon.
or Amazon or PayPal or a toll tag, just random
Yeah.
things, which I know it's obviously fake and it's a scam, but then people who might not be aware, they can easily fall for it. Or another thing is like alert fatigue, like with the dog fire, everything's fine and they're like nothing's fine, right? He's
Yeah.
surrounded by fire. Same thing with this scam. It's like, here's another one, here's another one. But then you might miss genuine messages when you actually do need to pay something or you do need to do something because you're so exhausted by the scam.
Yeah, that happened with me. My mom got a new phone number and she was calling me with the number. She didn't message me. She goes, I barely answer phone calls as it is. And she's like, I saw her. She's like, why didn't you answer my phone call? I was like, when did you call me? She showed me her phone. It's like pretty much trying to blow up my phone. And I was like, oh, well, mom, you got a new number and I don't answer numbers I don't save. She's like, why wouldn't you answer it? It's your mom. I'm like, it doesn't come up as mom. Like, I don't have it saved as mom. I'm not going to answer it. I didn't know you got a new number. But yeah, the alert fatigue, I feel that.
Yeah. I think it keeps getting worse, especially around the election times
Or holidays.
or the holidays. Yeah. So I think that's something everyone's experienced. Any advice to detect these scam messages for just the everyday person?
A good one is if it's rushing you, that's a tactic they use is they make you panic. They make you think that it's urgent. They make you think that the world's going to end if you don't click the button. So if you're feeling that anxiety within your body, like trust your instincts, right? If you're feeling anxiety in your body of like, I got to answer this now, I got to stop everything I'm doing, it's most likely a tactic that they have running. So take a moment, breathe. I usually breathe for 5 seconds. I'll put a reminder on my calendar and be like, all right, attend to this one message later. Something to remind you to just take a moment, think about it. And as you come back to it, you might just realize that it is a scam. And it will save you. For me, I accidentally sent somebody $500 in crypto. So it happens to everybody. Like there's engineers that got phished because, they're just like, in the moment and they see something pop up and they click on it. And they may be security professionals, but we've all fallen for scams. And when you think about it, if you just take a few minutes, read it, push it aside, and answer it later, you'll realize that it's a scam, hopefully.
Yeah, yeah, the great point. I think all of us have fallen for it, myself included, to be honest, because I like to think, I know how to detect it. And I did in hindsight. I knew like it was a, phishing text message or a phishing call. But sometimes I still answered the call or I still clicked on the link because I was just tired and it was like, oh, I'm tired. Let me just click on this, see what's going on. Maybe it really is furniture delivery or something else.
You're waiting on a call.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I was waiting for a call back on something and I picked up the next number. I'm in the middle of something and I remember answering the phone. I had just gone to RSA, so everybody had my phone number. And I heard the voice and it sounded like a bot, so I hung up and it was actually like somebody from RSA that was trying to like come have a conversation with me. There was a salesperson, so it was okay.
Yeah, we have a lot of, especially around conference time for those of us in cybersecurity, right? RSA, we're recording this the weekend before RSA. So people are going to start seeing the scam or spam messages like right now. Probably by the time this episode comes out, you'll be so tired of those RSA phone calls, emails, text messages. And then you think, how did they even get your email? And it's because you provided your email to a company for something
Hmm.
legitimate and then they sold your data to some other company.
Or you
So,
wanted those pair of socks
yes,
at the booth.
you really wanted the luggage tag at the booth. They were like, at RSA, they told me, hey, just fill this out. We'll give you a free gift. And the gift was just a luggage.
Or they just scan your badge and your badge has everything,
Yeah.
which is another security risk because then anybody can come by and go, click. Now they have your data.
Yeah. And that's another risk. And I know some people, they give fake information on the badge, but now I think RSA and these conferences they verify your information.
Yeah.
So I think I saw some people they were putting stickers on the RSA badge, something about like don't contact me or not in a position to buy anything, and they would put those things tags on their badge. Someone in the cybersecurity marketing society, he made that for everyone there. And that was genius. Like just
Oh,
put that on there to
or just put
prevent
a
getting that. Yeah.
or another QR code that just gives them fake data.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe we should try that next time because it's just too much.
Yeah. Like a month of RSA emails after.
Yeah. And then Black Hat and DEF CONs, not another thing.
Same thing.
Same thing. Yeah. So that's something I think people watching this or listening to this, they'll experience that if they're in cybersecurity when this episode comes out.
Or any conference, I think.
Yeah.
Just in general, you go to any conference, any major conference, your data gets sold.
Yeah, I think conferences, applying to jobs, anything, no matter who you are, you're gonna get a lot of spam messages.
Yeah,
And it's just like, okay, keep deleting, just bulk delete everything and hope you don't miss anything important.
pretty much.
Yeah. So, Yesenia, thank you so much for being on the episode. Are there any other resources you recommend for our audience to learn more?
Yeah, so look at OpenSSF for anyone's interested in getting into the space or either AI or cybersecurity. There's a bunch of different working groups in OpenSSF that are focused around software security for our open source. Check out OWASP as well. And outside of that, if you're looking for any digital safety information for everyday users, for parents, check out the Lioness Instincts. So it's thelionessinstincts.com. And on there, we do provide a online safety resource guide that talks about traveling, business. And if you can't find it, just feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to send you over the links for that. And thank you for having me today. This was an interesting and exciting conversation.
Thank you. This concludes our episode of the AI Security Update. We'll be back next time with more great conversations. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to the AI Security Update. No hype, just what you need to know. Subscribe to catch the latest episodes and connect with me, Dr. Anmol, on LinkedIn for more insights from the world of AI security. We'll see you next time.